you ready to make your own sweetheart envelope? Let's talk about some supplies. First, we're going to need some felt, and we need some contrasting color to make the needle felted hearts. I have some embroidery thread, so you can either match it with your wool roving that you're going to use to felt your heart, or you can match it with the wool felt that you use for the envelope. I have the pattern piece. I also have a little button. This one is made from shell, a needle felting needle. This is a 32 triangular shape. I have some snips, some scissors, a toilet roll tube, something to felt on. And I also have a needle and a few pins. Before we start, I just wanted to mention that the pattern for this project is available in my Etsy store. There's a direct link in the description. It includes a supply list, lots of suppliers, helpful videos, and lots of color photographs of all the steps. Also, if you have found value in my videos, I'd really love it if you could subscribe. It really helps me to create more patterns and tutorials for you. The first thing to do is to cut out your paper template pattern and then pin it to your piece of felt. And then we follow the paper template pattern as we cut out. We're going to remove the template piece. We'll just put this aside for now because we need to reference that in a minute. So now, if you're unsure, this rounded section, this is the top. And this section here with the flat side, that's the bottom. I've taken my toilet roll tube and I need to mark about an inch. I'm not measuring this at all. It's really not that important. So we need to cut this. I'm trying not to crush my tube, but I do need to make a little hole there. Okay, now I can just work this around. Okay, it doesn't need to look pretty. This side is the flat side, so I'll put that on the bottom. This side can come at the top. Since I've already made a little bit of a point here, I want to accentuate that. So I'm just going to pinch it together to create that little point. Now, I'm going to mark a line directly opposite that point. So I'm just eyeballing this and I'd say it's about here. Now I have my line. I'm going to indent this with my thumbnail and keep pushing in. While I push in, I'm trying to lift up the sides a little bit. And I'm going to curve them around my thumb to make a little heart shape. Just wiggle this a little bit so we get a heart shape that we like. I think I like this heart shape. Now I'm going to take my block of foam that I'm going to felt onto, and I will identify the top of the felt piece. This is this side. Also, you may want to think now which is going to be the outside and which is going to be the inside, because we want the outside facing right now. So with the outside facing, I say this because sometimes you can buy a beautiful piece of hand dyed felt which might have color variations which you want to highlight. So right side out, and take a little heart, and we're going to put this in the middle. So I can see these points here and these two here. I want it right in the middle. If I'm imagining there's a square here, I want it right in the middle of that square. Actually, I'm going to turn that over because that was my rough side. Now we're going to take a small amount of our wool roving and just push it down into the bottom. The more I put in here, the taller and fatter the heart will be. Okay, take your needle felting needle, and now we're going to just felt this. So if you only do it gently, you don't need to worry about poking your fingers with this needle. Yeah, I'm probably concentrating on the edges a little more than I am in the middle right now. So once we have felted for a little bit, you might start to see at the edges, we haven't quite got enough wool. So let's give it a bit of a head start. I'm going to push that right to the edge to help me felt that little edge there. So we can do this for any area that you think the color is a bit light. Just take a little bit more wool roving, scrunch it up a very small amount, and then work it into that section. Okay, now we can take off the tubing, and we're going to work a little bit from without the tubing because it's a little bit easier to see. So I'm definitely working the edges. I want to gently lift up your felting piece from the surface that you're felting on, so it doesn't work into that surface. So when you are happy with your shape, turn it over, and we're going to give this section a bit of a trim. We do this so the envelope is smoother on the inside. Just be careful not to cut your felt. You're just cutting these wispy bits of wool. And you're going to want to brush this off into the bin, or pluck these little bits of hair off. So this is our top, as we identified earlier, and this is the bottom. We're going to fold these side flaps in, and we just want the points to touch each other in the middle. And we take our pins and we pin them in place. Okay, now I'm going to fold the bottom part up over the top of these. So I don't want to pull it too tight that these bottom corners fold like this, but I do want to fold them so I can see just a little straight edge at the bottom here, and I want that on both sides. So when I get that into place, I'm going to pin that there as well. My embroidery thread comes in strands of 6, and I only need 2 of them, so I'm going to separate that out. When you have 2 strands of your embroidery thread, thread it onto a needle, and we're going to position this at the bottom right corner. But I don't want it to be visible, so I'm going to thread through the felt. I'm trying to get it in the middle of the felt, but not underneath. I want it to be sitting in the layers of felt here. I do this so I can create this little tail, and I don't need to bury that thread end in a minute. So let's tie a knot. And I'm going to snip that end now. Give it a bit of a wiggle so it disappears inside. And we're going to start a one-sided blanket stitch, which is pretty easy. So I'm definitely not going through these layers to the layer underneath, because if I go all the way through, that would mean that I sew my envelope shut, and that wouldn't make a very useful envelope. So I'm just catching the tiniest bit of wool on this side and then going straight up through this top edge. And then because it's a blanket stitch, I'm going back through the loop that I created. And this creates a lovely little decorative edge. When you reach the top corner here, we're going to do one last single-sided blanket stitch. And then I'm going to just continue along this edge, but instead of a single-sided blanket stitch, it's just a regular blanket stitch. We're not joining 2 pieces together. This is just the edge here. So be careful not to join this flap onto the back of your envelope. So you're only working the top edge of the bottom flap here. I'm going to remove that pin because I keep getting caught on it. And when we come to the other corner, we want to make sure we catch both edges. It's the side flap and the bottom flap. I'm catching both of them when I come to this corner here. And this is a regular blanket stitch. And now we go back to our one-sided blanket stitch, working down the left side flap. I'm going to move that out of there because I put my pin around the wrong way and I don't want to stitch it in there, but I'm going to put it back. I can remove this one now, but I want to keep this one here so that this sits correctly while I work this section. I'm just careful that I don't poke myself on this edge here. I'm just coming up to the very last stitch. I'm going to remove that pin now because that doesn't really matter. I don't need it to hold this flap anymore. So this is the last stitch, but now I'm going to create a little knot here. I'm careful to make sure my thread doesn't get tangled. And now I'm going to thread through this layer of felt, just so I can bury this end here. Pull it tight and give it a snip close to your fabric. Give it a wiggle so it disappears inside. I threaded a new length of embroidery thread onto my needle. I'm going to work all the way around here now. Before I do that, I want to work the needle through the felt again to the position just here where both of these two flaps meet. Just like we did at the beginning, I'm going to leave a little tail so that I can cut that in a second. Now let's create a little knot. And we'll trim this tail. And now we're just going to blanket stitch all the way around the top flap here. Oh, what is that? I'll see you in a minute once I've gone all the way around the edge here and I'm coming back over to this section. I'm just completing these last few blanket stitches. So now I've done the last one, I want to create a little knot. And I'm going to bury my thread, but if we look at our pattern piece, that's the way, we're going to attach a button just about here. So I'm going to thread my embroidery thread through the felt till I come to the position of the button. I'm looking to make sure my needle isn't doing exactly this. I want it to go through the felt, not be seen from either side. This is more difficult if you're using contrasting color felt to your wool, because you'll be able to see it, especially because mine is darker than this lighter wool here. But I think that's okay. So I've got it into this position here. I'm going to take my little button and I'm going to sew it on in this position. I'm very careful on the inside that I don't stitch the envelope closed by stitching through the back part of the envelope. Ouch, don't stitch your skin either. This is also a good opportunity for you to put a couple of stitches in these little flaps on the inside. Okay, when you've stitched it on the inside, you want to create a little knot. And now I want to thread the embroidery thread through the felt. I'm doing it in this little section here because I know there's a flap there, and it's much more likely that I'll go through a layer of felt and not poke out from the top or the bottom. Now the very last thing we're going to do is create this buttonhole. I like to use these little snips here because they tend to work a bit better. So I do have the position indicated on the pattern, but the best thing for you to do is to fold over the top of your envelope and see where your button sits. So I think if I put a hole just here, that might be good. Very gently, I'm just cutting tiniest little hole to begin with. Once I get through the layers of felt, then I can just tidy it up a bit. I want to make it big enough that it's easy to use with a button, but not so big that it's just going to keep coming undone. Time to test. There we go. And our little envelope is finished. Thank you so much for crafting with me again today, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, show your support by giving it a like. And if you'd like to stay updated with all of my new tutorials, please subscribe.